Pray for Our Sinners is a new Irish documentary written, directed, and narrated by Sinead O'Shea. In her follow-up feature to the highly touted A Mother Brings Her Son to Be Shot. In it, Sinead returns to her hometown of Navan to try and zoom in on the damage the Catholic Church's unchallenged rule for most of the 20th century wrought over the people in a village that may be averse to speaking out in a way that may be required for change to happen. She encounters some amazing characters along the way, such as Dr. Mary Randalls, who, along with her late husband, Dr. Paddy Randalls, led a quiet resistance supporting unmarried mothers and opposing corporal punishment. She also meets mother and baby home survivor Betty Etna, who point blank refused to go to one when she fell pregnant, and Norman as well, who spoke up about the brutal corporal punishment that he suffered in school. It's a subject that's very close to my own heart, given that my then unmarried mother was almost forced to put me up for adoption before a dramatic last minute about turn that wouldn't actually be out of place in this movie saw things work out very differently for both of us. So it was with that in mind that I brought an emotional weight to this, and I'm really happy to say that paid off. I thought Pray for Our Sinners was a brilliant documentary. Sinead is very front and center of the documentary, with some powerful pieces of narration vividly articulating how even today's small town life can make her nervous about speaking up and ruffling feathers in making this movie, and also how we ultimately oppress ourselves by ceding so much power to the church and the corrupt governments who worked hand in hand with it. It's that soft personal touch that she brings that makes some of the stories feel so personal and also harrowing. Any Irish person knows a Betty or an Etna, and hearing Sinead's gentle reassurance to them that they won't get in trouble for talking about what happened just brings home the reality and leaves us feeling like we can still see the scar tissue and the trauma that remains omnipresent in their lives to this day. It's also nice to watch a story about this subject that has some positive elements in it and some wins. You'll come away from this wondering how we're not shouting about people like the Randalls on the Late Late Show every single Friday. We've heard all of these stories before, but often they're brutal because Ireland was so submissive in its suffering and went along with it. So it's really empowering to hear about people who actually fought back and every now and then actually won too. Pray for Our Sinners is an excellent but not perfect documentary, and there are some forgivable nits to pick. The movie opens positing that it was the power vacuum of winning our independence from the Brits that led to the Catholic Church gaining a foothold. And immediately you're like, oh Jesus, we're talking about the Brits and the Church. Play the hits, Sinead. And that's followed by an explainer that the result was an Ireland that brutalised its vulnerable, especially women and children. Sinead wears that bias and agenda on her sleeve for better and worse. And look, that works when you see the empathy that she treats her contributors with and her understanding of the subject matter, but also choosing not to approach the story from an objective point of view has its drawbacks too. And look, most documentaries do feel a certain way. That's why the documentary is being made. They're trying to tell a specific story, but you allow that story generally to unfold objectively and only really show your hand in making it in the closing summary of what happened next. And what the effect that has on the viewer is, if you tell that story objectively, the viewer then feels empowered by making their own mind up and being able to not feel directed by the plot. But also then when you see that the closing statement that the director did actually have the same stance as you had, you feel rewarded and that you feel like you were morally right for the stance that you ended up arriving on, and the filmmaker was always on your side. Being very clear about her biases means she walks into some dead ends. For example, at one stage she follows the subplot of Father Andy Farrell, who drove Betty to the mother and baby home when she came to him, but was otherwise celebrated in the Navan community as a progressive champion of socialism and was pushed out of the church as a result. This emotive reaction and the need for a figurehead to paint as the bad guy leads Sinead to go looking for a smoking gun in the form of a mysterious video that, once found, actually proves more the point that his defenders were trying to make. And that's the nature of documentaries. You kind of have to tell the story that you have. The fact that Sinead has such powerful accounts from compelling subjects means that she has to focus on the subjects of unmarried mothers and corporal punishment, which means that you can't help but feel that she kind of had to bury the lead when she only briefly mentions child sex abuse scandals, which is really what the church is most known for in terms of how they did the most damage to Ireland. To Monday morning quarterback it a bit, I feel that if she could go back and make it in hindsight, I can't speak for her, but I feel like if I was going back and making this in hindsight, I'd probably make it the story about the Randalls, but that would also allow her to focus on the people that the Randalls kind of helped out in the meantime. I think she gave herself a bit too much of an ambitious task in trying to tackle the entire subject of Catholicism's damage to Irish society in just 81 minutes, albeit it was a task that she performed admirably. But this is all forgivable, though. In truth, I absolutely love this documentary and I really recommend everyone go see it immediately. I feel and hope it's going to be one that grows legs and has us all talking, because it's very timely, especially when you consider the subject matter when we're talking about mother and baby homes and the likes. And it absolutely deserves to do so. Let's pray for our sinners. Go watch it now.